Joining me now, former three-time guest on the podcast here, first-class father Sean Parnell. Welcome back.
Hey, this is my claim to fame, Alec. This is like a pretty amazing podcast. We were talking about before it came on. Like, you have some like amazing guests on this show, and I think you're talking about something that is immensely important. It doesn't get talked about enough.
No, not at all. And I have been blessed to have a lot of guys. You see them on the board. I got you on the tie here, too. I don't got you on the board there, but I got you on the tie, all right?
On the tie.
But all kidding aside here, yes, I think all these things that we're talking about at CPAC, the policies and all this other stuff, all of it doesn't mean anything if we can't get our nuclear family unit strengthened in this country again. Now, the family court system in our country is a total, a cartel. It's a total catastrophe. Nobody knows it better than you. So I wanted to ask you an update now on your kids. How old are your kids now, and how is your relationship with them going since everything's happened?
Well, my relationship with my kids is incredibly strong. My kids, like my oldest is Ethan, he's 14. My middle is Emma, she's 12. My youngest is Evan, and he's 10. They're doing okay. They don't like this new order. I think they'd tell you that too. But to your point about the family court system, if you sat down, Democrats and Republicans, and asked them, how best can we solve some of the problems that we face in this country, I think many of them would say, well, I think those conversations about how to solve these problems need to happen around the dinner table. Moms and dads involved in the lives of their children, teaching them things about loyalty, respect, honor, integrity, talking to them when they don't get a good grade, attending their extracurricular activities, being involved in their lives, right? But the family courts in this country, they pull families apart and make it difficult to do that, oftentimes citing conflict as the reason for doing it. But here, I have an issue with that as a standard for splitting up families or awarding custody to one parent or the other. Now look, this is an issue that affects moms and dads, but fathers by and large in this country, if even according to the U.S. Census Bureau, they lose custody. If they find themselves in a contentious custody fight, they lose custody of their children 80% of the time. And even if you look in a state like Pennsylvania, where I had my family court case, there's an organization called the Dad's Resource Group or Dad's Resource Center. They did a study of 700 custody cases from a random sample of 15 different counties all across the state of Pennsylvania. And something like 400 plus of those instances, mom got custody. There's like 104 instances of shared custody. And just 100 out of 700 did dad get custody. This is a major problem in this country of fathers being willfully taken out of the lives of their children by the government. And the reason for it is, and I'm slightly ashamed to say that I did not know any of this prior to getting caught up in the system myself, but the reason for it is, Alec, is that states are incentivized to split up families and order child support amounts because they get reimbursed almost on a dollar-for-dollar basis to every child support dollar that they dole out. So the federal government reimburses state governments for child support enforcement, and what essentially happens is it's a massive incentive for trial courts, appellate courts to split up families, and it has to stop. There has to be a better way, and I'll tell you, like, I could talk all day on this, as you could probably tell, Alec, but there needs to be federal equal shared parenting laws, period, end of story. The laws vary far too much in each of the 50 states. And unless there is a clear and convincing case of abuse, drug abuse, alcohol abuse, and I'm talking clear as day, where the child is in danger, parents or children should have equal access to both parents. Who is protecting the constitutional rights of these children and the access to both parents? It's we can do better. We have to do better. The future of our country, I think, depends on it.
Very well said, Sean. Yeah, and you know what? The system is benefiting while our society is just crumbling because of what's happening, because of this entire thing. And it's not talked about nearly enough. And everybody seems to kind of know that it's going on, but hey, yeah, that's just the way it is.
You want to know why? I'm learning, going through this myself. And when I went through I had the O.J. Simpson trial of custody trials. So every media outlet in the country was there. First of all, custody trials should be sealed, period, end of story. Or complete access. And what I mean by that is nothing should be told through the prism of the media. The media in this country is broken. They don't tell the truth. They have a narrative that they stick to, and that's it. So and the perfect example that I can give of this is imagine what the Johnny Depp Amber Heard trial would look like if there weren't cameras in there. Like, do you think Johnny Depp would have had a fair shake at all? Hell no. And the reason why he did is because there were cameras in there capturing it all, and the American people could judge for themselves. But children right now in this country, I think by and large, the reason why a lot of this stuff doesn't get handled when you talk to legislators, both Democrats or Republicans, they don't want to get, they think like, divorce is, there are two sides to every story, divorce is ugly, they don't want to get involved in family court drama, and then so what happens is they take a step back and no one handles the problem, and it gets worse and worse and worse, to where, I mean, you know this, and I hear you talk about it on your show, but children that don't have access to their fathers on a daily basis or even on a regular basis do worse in school. They're far more likely to smoke cigarettes or do drugs. They're far more likely to commit suicide or commit some sort of self-harm. They have more emotional issues in school. They have less positive relationships with their friends. Like, when you take fathers out of the home, not only does it create problems for that family and the children in the moment, but you're setting that child up for failure in the real world, because if parents can't handle their child and give them some sense of structure in their childhood, society handles them later, and that's where we're at now.
Right, and you know what, the messaging too, like I get it a lot from single moms that'll come out and say, well, I raised my son and or 3 kids by myself and they turned out okay. And my message to them is, it's not a knock. Like, we are filling up the prison systems in this country with one particular type of person, and that is a fatherless child, a boy, a man who grew up without a father in the home. So not every kid who grows up without a dad is going to end up in prison, but 85% of the kids in prison are coming from fatherless households.
And look, like, if you're a single mom and you raised your kids on your own and the dad didn't want to be around or walk out or didn't fulfill his role as a father, I mean, amazing work. You're a freaking superhero to be able to handle that on your own. Like amazing. But it doesn't mean that situation is ideal. It doesn't mean that that's a situation that child wants to be in. I mean,
right. A guy smokes till he's 90 years old, never has a health problem. Does that mean it's good for everybody to smoke now? You know what I mean? There's always an outlier to these things, but it's always. And I remember in 2008, Barack Obama, he got the nomination. He wasn't president just yet, but he gave a Father's Day speech that was very powerful, and he talked about the fatherless crisis, particularly in the African American community. He said it's nowhere is it worse than in the African American community. He said, a lot of that is due to some injustices, and those injustices are real, but we can't keep using that as an excuse. And it was a very good speech. Unfortunately, we never heard him talk about that ever again once he became president.
I've seen maybe that on the internet once. You don't even see it like on websites on the internet much anymore either, right? And yeah, it's a real problem, and like when I talk about the idea that kids deserve to have both parents, like, who is protecting these children and their constitutional right and their constitutional access to have 2 parents that love them? Like, is there going to be conflict in a divorce? Like, of course, right? There's conflict and then there's conflict, right? Like, and typically if the conflict is so bad, Alec, the kids will tell you, right? But then you also like pair that with the fact that like there's research out there that says 80% of allegations of domestic violence and other things like that in the family court system are not true. And that's leveled by men and women. So like we're looking at the lion's share of allegations raised in the family court system not to be true. Obviously, they're leveled at one parent or the other to give them a leg up in custody in the hopes that they get more custody time with their kids. Like, what I want to see is that gladiator stuff completely removed from the equation. Whereas if families walk into a court system and one parent is filing for primary or sole legal custody of the children over a father or a mom, that judge looks at them and says, you know what, sir or ma'am, there better be a damn good reason why you're asking for this. There better be a damn good reason. And I think that comes part and parcel with that is that false allegations, whether they're leveled by fathers or mothers, need to be punishment for it. Like, you can't let people get away with leveling false accusations in a court system that can ruin someone's life. And more often than not, it's the fathers.
Also, they're tattooing that information onto the kids, and the kids now believe that as to be the truth. And I wanted to ask you this. So you've been obviously through the ringer with this stuff. What advice do you have for the father that's on the onset right now of this type of situation, going through the divorce and the custody battle? What is your message? I mean, what have you learned?
Well, I mean, first and foremost, like, if you can save and salvage your marriage, do it. Like, sometimes you can't, and I recognize that. And look, 50% of the people in this country have been divorced. It's a real thing. It's a real problem for a lot of people. And the other 50% of the people in this country know someone who's been through a contentious divorce. So we're all affected by it in a lot of different ways. But if you can salvage your marriage in some way, do it, because kids just do better in a nuclear family where mom and dad are still together. But if you can't, and in your heart of hearts that there's no going back, I feel like, and this might be an overgeneralization, so forgive me if it is, but I feel like men are more reticent to let go and more hesitant to get help early on. In other words, they're more hesitant to reach out to a lawyer, to reach out to any resources that might be available to help that very stressful time, Because divorce, whether you're a mom or you're a dad, and especially the kids, it's extremely, extremely difficult on everybody. So sometimes I feel like moms are just moms sort of run the show. They run the show for the most part in the households that I've been in. My mom, as an Italian mother, ran the show. It was just how it was, And I feel like, by and large, having been an advocate for men that are going through this now over the last 18 months, men are not as prepared. And look at it like this. I'll give you an example like this. There are women's resource centers in every county in the state of Pennsylvania. How many men's resource centers are in the counties? Not a single one. Not a single one. Not one. So that tells you that there are more resources available to women than there are to men. That's a problem. Because of that, men are less prepared, perhaps less willing to let go. They don't like change. And so men oftentimes find themselves behind the power curve. And so if you have a sense, and you're a man out there, you feel like your family's falling apart, your world's falling apart, find someone that can help you think straight and navigate that problem so that your family, it's always going to be a difficult time for everybody involved, but find someone that can help guide you and then advocate for you and fight for you. And what I mean by that is you're going to have a lot of family court attorneys. Just when you look at the stats of how often men lose custody of their children, 80%, they're going to say, just take the bare minimum. Just take the bare minimum. And in my case, every media outlet in the country at my custody trial, but no one bothered to ask the question. It was wait, this is a father fighting to be in the lives of his children. Shouldn't that be applauded? There was a point in time in this country where we celebrated fathers wanting to be involved in the lives of their children. I spent hundreds of thousands of dollars fighting to be in the lives of my children, and the media made it seem like when I was at the height of my Senate race that all this was happening it was a new thing. It wasn't a new thing. I've been caught up in the custody system since 2017, right? Hundreds of thousands of dollars on the family court system, and here's the thing that will blow you away. Had I just walked away, right, and did the every other weekend dad thing, and just paid my child support, maybe never even talked to my kids again, and just was half involved, I would still have a better custody arrangement than I do right now. How is that justice? Yeah. Not for me. I can handle it, and I'm going to keep fighting for my kids, but how is that justice for my kids? They don't deserve that. They didn't ask for that. And again, what I'm slightly ashamed to say, Alec, is that there are millions of fathers in the same boat as me, and come hell or high water, before I pass from this earth, I will change these laws for families that come through it after me.
I pray to God that you do, and I'll tell you what, I know. Listen, you're an American hero. I always love having you on the show, but my heart broke and hurt for you when I saw some of the stuff on social media being said about you, being talked about you. I can't imagine. Now, a lot of dads go through this. They go through it on the down low and everything. Yours was so public, and to be out there like that, I mean, have your kids had to see all this stuff? How do you deal with it with your kids? How do you explain any of this stuff?
So Alec, I feel like my relation. You asked me early on, and I'm how my relationship is with my kids. If there's a silver lining to any of this, and there aren't many, but we have a stronger relationship now than we ever did before, because we don't take it for granted, and we know how fragile it can be. Like this. You have somebody in a black robe that meets your kids for 3 days. All of a sudden, they're gone from your life 80% of the time. Things can change that fast in the family court system. So I think, I don't want to speak for my kids, but I think that they would say that we don't take for granted that relationship anymore. Because sometimes, when you're always there and you're in a routine, you expect things will never change. But that's not life, right? Sometimes in life, you're thrown a curveball. You know. As it pertains to the custody trial and all those super public false allegations, I tried to have the trial sealed. And and the media made it out to be like, oh, Sean Parnell is trying to prevent his ex-wife from talking about abuse. That had nothing to do with it. What I said to the judge was, listen, if this custody trial is open and my kids are exposed to some of the more negative elements that mom says about me or that I might have to say about her in a trial, and that those things are reported. Like, my kids aren't going to be present in the trial, but if those things are reported on by the media and my oldest son is old enough to go on the internet and Google it and find out for himself what's going on, how is that any different than me talking negatively about their mom? The court would rightly frown upon that. So why then is their position on an open trial with kids exposed to all of that toxicity? How is that in their best interest? When the charge of the family court system is the best interest of the kids, how are children served by a media with a narrative that just pushing one side? Because when those allegations were leveled, like, the media never reported that I didn't. I mean, maybe one article reported that I completely denied them, right? And they didn't report at all that the judge didn't find any of it, you know? What the judge weighted most significantly in my decision, my custody decision, was that I was the leading candidate for United States Senate, and essentially it had me busy on the campaign trail and therefore not around enough for my kids, even though there was no evidence presented of me ever missing a custody period at all. Never mind the fact that, can you imagine if that order was issued to a single mom who was trying to pay for her children and make a living? Like, can you imagine? But because I'm a dad, it's permissible, you know?
Unbelievable.
Working my butt off to better my position, to provide for my family, I get punished for that.
Yeah, I remember Dean Cain being on the show and talking about how he was put in that situation with his acting career where he was fighting a stay-away case with his son, and he had an option at the time to take a role that would have made him one of the largest paid actors in TV at the time. But if he took it, he would have had no chance of having anything custody with his son. He would have lost the case. So he turned it down right away, and that was the end of that opportunity for him. But it's like, why are you put in that position in the first place? Is ridiculous.
I'm sorry, like, you know, and again, like, I'm not saying anything negative about the judge. I respect his decision. I respect his order. I followed it to the word, right? I don't agree with it. That's why I'm fighting it and I'm appealing it, because it's not good for my kids. And by the way, like, I want my children to have access to their mother. Like, that's not something that I ever want to see taken away from them. Again, my position is kids deserve to have mom and dad in their life. You know, kids deserve to have access to the love of a mother and a father. But, like, when you look at that, not only did they take primary custody, to get awarded primary custody of my ex, like, I lost legal custody. So you have as much say in the lives of my children as I do. No abuse, no drugs, no alcohol. No, the incarcerated have more parental rights of their own children than me. Drug addicts, sex offenders have more rights to their children than me. I've never done anything but try to serve my country. And that, to me, is why the ruling is so egregious. And especially when you look at, like, okay, these parents can't agree. Father's making unilateral decisions. Mom's making unilateral decisions. Clearly, like, okay, the decision-making authority should be with just one. This wasn't the instance in my case at all. I mean, my kids go to private school. They have all these sports. Is there conflict in my relationship with my ex? Like, of course. You go through a divorce, there's going to be conflict. But my kids aren't exposed to it, you know? So, yeah, I'm fighting the order. I'm going to continue to fight the order. And I believe in the system. I have to believe in the system. But you can bet that when I come through this, there will every waking moment of my life moving forward will be to fix this broken system, because it is broken. And these rulings that are issued in these family courts are every bit as consequential as criminal court rulings. They tear apart families, so we have to fix the problem.
They lead to the criminal court hearings.
It's one big self-licking ice cream cone. And the most advanced country on the face of the planet, we can do so much better than this.
Yeah, definitely. And I know now you're remarried now.
Yes.
Your wife is here with you.
Yes, she's right back there.
What has your relationship been like now with your wife and your kids? Do they have the form a relationship there? How is that? I know that she's coming in, to a difficult situation. So how has that been for her?
She has been. She is a warrior, and I'll tell you, I would not have been able to make it through this without her. Like, I'm telling you, like. And she's got girls, and now they're a part of the family. They're not my biological daughters, but I love them like they are, and they get along with my kids so well. Like, you snap your fingers, you go from 3 kids to 5 right off the bat. So we're like the Brady Bunch without Alice, you know. But she's a warrior, and without her, I'm telling you, man, I couldn't have made it. We're still in it, you know. We're still fighting. but I'm not going to give up. But I might have if it wasn't for her. I'm not even joking. Like, I feel like how many men are put in a position that I was in that maybe didn't have the public profile or didn't have the money to fight, you know? How many men just walk away because it's too difficult and they don't have the money? That is an unacceptable reason to be taken out of the lives of your children. And again, I keep coming back to this, but we can do so much better.
I get those emails every week. There's never a week goes by I don't get at least one or two emails from a dad that's in that same position you just described. So I wanted to ask you, are you still doing the writing career? What was the last book? All Out War? What was the last one you did?
So the last one was a book called Left for Dead. So I've got one nonfiction called Outlaw Platoon, and I've got 4 fiction books, but those contracts weren't renewed after the custody. So this isn't poor me.
So you lost that as well.
Yeah, well, everything. I mean, you lose that because I came into politics, with corporate partnerships and everything else, like all of it gone. And this isn't a poor me. Like, again, sometimes life throws you curveballs. We're working through them. It's fine, Hardship. I'm grateful for the hardship, Alec, because it's going to make me a tougher, stronger person when I see this through the end. I'm not going to quit. I'm going to keep fighting for my kids because they deserve a father that's going to fight for them. And we'll get back on the horse. We got plans to write more books, so I, at a minimum, have to round out the story for everyone who's read all 4 of them. So
I look forward to that. All right, last thing I want to hit you with here. I'd love to close it out this way. What kind of advice do you have for that brand new dad or for that about-to-be father who's out there listening?
Don't ever quit on your kids. And there are going to come times where, even in the greatest of relationships, where you feel like parenting doesn't come with a manual, like you feel like if there's late nights with your kid crying, or you feel like you're not worthy of being a dad. I mean, if you're parenting the right way, there are going to be days that you go to sleep thinking, God, am I doing this right? Like, man, what the hell? How could I do this better? Or, man, I feel bad. Like, maybe I shouldn't have done things this way. But just don't quit. Like, always seek to get better, because your kids will see that. They'll see you trying. Share your vulnerability as a parent with your kids as well, because they see that and they appreciate that. And if they see that you're actually trying, and they see some of the dilemmas that you as a parent go through as you're raising your kids, it helps them respect your decisions more. So just don't quit and be there for them. Never stop.
Very well said. I love the message. It's an honor to actually meet you in person and do this one in person. You're a first-class father all the way, and thank you so much.
Thanks, brother. Yeah, thanks.
All right.